7 boys. 1 company. Nearly 500,000 shares of stock, gifted, held, and in some cases quietly sold when nobody was watching. In August 2020, just weeks before Big Hit Entertainment rang the bell on one of South Korea's most explosive IPOs in history, Chairman Bang Si-hyuk did something unprecedented. He personally transferred 68,385 shares of his own company stock to each and every member of BTS. Equal. Identical. No favoritism. 478,695 shares total, split 7 ways. But here's the thing about equality. It didn't last. By late 2021, 3 members had already moved pieces off the board, selling portions of their holdings during a market rally that saw HYBE's stock price soar past 300,000 won per share. Meanwhile, 4 members never touched a single share. Not one. So the question becomes, who held on the tightest? Who cashed out the most? And with HYBE trading around 185,000 won per share in August 2026, whose remaining stake is worth the most money right now? Did the members who sold make a genius move, or did they leave billions of won on the table? Which BTS member sits at the very bottom of the stock ownership ranking, and which one quietly dominates the top? You think you know the answer? Trust me, some of these numbers are going to surprise you. Let's count it down. Number 7. Jimin. The eldest cashed out the hardest and still has the least shares. Let's start at the very bottom of this list, and honestly, the name sitting here might catch some of you off guard because we're talking about none other than Kim Seokjin. Jimin. The eldest young. The worldwide handsome. The man who was literally scouted by SM Entertainment at age 15 turned it down because he thought it was a scam, then got discovered by a big hit casting director while stepping off a public bus on his way to Konkuk University, where he was studying film. Not music. Not dance. Film. This guy didn't even train to be a singer originally. He came into Big Hit as an acting trainee, and somewhere along those 3 grueling years of pre-debut preparation between 2010 and 2013, he pivoted. He chose the stage. He chose BTS. And on June 13, 2013, he stood alongside 6 other boys and debuted with Too Cool for School, not knowing that this decision would eventually make him not just a global superstar, but a shareholder in one of the most powerful entertainment companies in Asian market history. Fast forward to August 2020. Bang Si-hyuk, the founder and chairman of Big Hit Entertainment, soon to be rebranded as HYBE, does something that shook the entire Korean entertainment industry. He personally gifted 68,385 shares of the company's common stock to each of the 7 BTS members. That's 478,695 shares total, carved directly out of his own holdings, handed over as what the company officially described as a token of long-term partnership. Nobody forced him. There was no contract obligation. It was a gesture, but a gesture worth billions. When the IPO launched on October 15, 2020, at a listing price of 135,000 won per share, those 68,385 shares each member held were suddenly worth approximately 9.2 billion won. On the very first day of trading, when the stock opened at a staggering 270,000 won, nearly double the IPO price, each member's stake briefly touched the 18 billion won mark. 18 billion won. For shares they received as a gift. Let that sit for a moment. Now here's where Jin's story diverges from the rest. On October 19, 2021, almost exactly 1 year after the IPO, Jin made a move. He sold 16,000 of his 68,385 shares in a single transaction. The stock was trading at approximately 302,688 won per share at that time, which means Jin walked away from that sale with roughly 4.84 billion won in cash. That's about $4.1 million USD at the exchange rate back then. And just like that, with 1 regulatory filing and 1 market order, Jin went from holding the same number of shares as every other BTS member to holding the fewest. 52,385 shares remaining. The most any member sold. The biggest single block offloaded by any BTS member in the history of HYBE's public trading. Now, was it a bad move? Let's actually do the math, because the numbers tell a fascinating story. Jimin sold at 302,688 won per share. As of August 2026, HYBE is trading at around 185,000 won per share. That means the 16,000 shares he sold would be worth only about 2.96 billion won today if he had kept them. He got 4.84 billion for them. So on paper, Jimin made the smartest financial decision of any BTS member that year. He cashed out near the peak. He pocketed nearly 1.9 billion won more than those shares are worth right now. Some financial analysts pointed out at the time that these kinds of moves, selling a portion during a rally while retaining a significant majority, are textbook asset management strategies recommended by wealth advisors. And Jimin didn't sell everything. He kept 52,385 shares, which at today's price of 185,000 won are worth approximately 9.69 billion won, still comfortably inside the 10 billion won club, when you factor in dividends and the overall valuation fluctuations throughout the year. But the emotional layer here is what makes this ranking hit different. Think about the timeline. Jimin sold in October 2021. Just over a year later, in December 2022, he became the first BTS member to enlist in the South Korean military. He served as an assistant drill instructor at a boot camp in Yonggi, Gyeonggi Province, and didn't walk out of those barracks until June 12, 2024. That's 18 months where he had zero income from performing, zero touring revenue, zero concert fees. Was the stock sale partly about financial preparation for a period where active income would drop to virtually nothing? Nobody from the Jimin camp has ever confirmed that publicly, but the timing is almost too perfect to be coincidental. And what did Jimin do when he came back? He didn't slow down. He dropped Happy in November 2024, a 6-track solo debut album that moved 845,690 copies on Hanteo in its first day alone, hit platinum certification from RAJ in Japan within its first month, and sent the pre-release single, I'll Be There, straight to #1 in the UK. The title track, Running Wild, landed at number 53 on the Billboard Hot 100. The man came back from military service and immediately reminded the world why the industry calls him worldwide handsome, not because of his face, but because of his global reach. So yes, Jimin sits at number 7 on this list with 52,385 shares of HYBE stock, the fewest of any BTS member. He sold the most. He cashed out the hardest. But he also sold at the best possible time, walked into military service financially secured, came out swinging with a platinum album, and still holds a stake worth nearly 10 billion won in one of Korea's biggest entertainment conglomerates. Last place on this list? Sure. But don't mistake the position for the story, because Jimin played the long game with a calculator in one hand and a microphone in the other. Now, if Jimin is down here at the bottom having sold 16,000 shares, what about the member who sold the second largest block? The answer might surprise you, and it's coming up next. Number 6. The leader didn't sell in one shot. He moved like a strategist. If Jin's stock move was a bold single swing, one day, one transaction, 16,000 shares gone, then what Kim Namjoon did was the complete opposite. The leader of BTS, the man who taught himself English by watching Friends reruns, the guy who stood at the podium of the 73rd United Nations General Assembly in 2018 and told the entire world, "We have learned to love ourselves, so now I urge you to speak yourself." This man did not panic sell. He did not impulse sell. He calculated. Between October 13th and November 9th, 2021, RM executed not one, not two, but 7 separate transactions, offloading a total of 10,385 shares of HYBE stock across nearly a month of carefully timed market windows. 7 moves. Spread across almost 4 weeks. That's not someone dumping shares because they're nervous. That's someone managing a portfolio with intention. The total proceeds from those 7 sales came to approximately 3.2 billion won roughly. 2.75 to 2.89 million USD, depending on the exchange rate fluctuations during that period. And when the dust settled, RM was left holding 58,000 shares of HYBE. Not the lowest on this list, that title belongs to Jin at 52,385, but the second lowest. The second member to shed the most stock from his original allotment. And yet, the way he did it tells you everything you need to know about the kind of mind that runs BTS. Let's rewind for a second, because you cannot understand RM's relationship with HYBE's stock without understanding RM's relationship with value itself. This is a man who, by age 15, was already an underground rapper in the Hongdae scene under the name Runch Randa. Bang Si-hyuk heard his music on a demo tape, tracked him down, and recruited him as the foundation stone for what would eventually become BTS. Not a background dancer. Not a visual placeholder. The foundation. The leader. RM was the first member, and the entire group was literally built around his energy, his lyrics, his vision. Before there was a Jungkook or a V or a Jimin, there was Namjoon, sitting in a cramped studio with Bang PD, writing the DNA of what Bangtan Sonyeondan would become. So when Bang Si-hyuk gifted those 68,385 shares in August 2020, it wasn't just a business gesture for RM. It was a symbolic acknowledgement from the man who built the company to the man who built its most valuable asset. Think about that weight. RM didn't just receive shares in a random corporation. He received shares in his own life's work, packaged as a publicly traded entity on the Korean Stock Exchange. Now here's the analytical layer that makes this ranking so fascinating. RM sold 10,385 shares across 7 transactions when the stock was riding high. HYBE's price was hovering between 290,000 and 340,000 won per share during that October-November 2021 window. If we take a conservative average of around 308,000 won per share, those 10,385 shares netted him approximately 3.2 billion won. Today, with HYBE sitting at 185,000 won per share in August 2026, those same 10,385 shares would only be worth about 1.92 billion won. That means RM's staggered selling strategy earned him roughly 1.28 billion won more than he would have gotten by holding. Over a billion won in pure timing advantage. But here's the thing that separates RM from every other BTS member who sold. His approach wasn't just financially smart, it was philosophically consistent with who he is. This is a man with 231 registered songwriting and composition credits at Komka as of mid-2025, making him one of the most prolific songwriter artists in the entire history of Korea's music copyright system. This is a man who collects contemporary art, not as decoration, but as intellectual pursuit. In October 2026, just a couple months from now, RM is set to open a curated exhibition at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art titled RM X MoMA, Between You and Me, featuring nearly 200 works including pieces from his own personal collection that have never been publicly shown in the United States. A K-pop idol curating an exhibition at one of America's most prestigious art institutions. That's not a celebrity hobby, that's a parallel career. And it tells you that when RM made those 7 stock transactions in 2021, he wasn't thinking about quick cash. He was likely reallocating capital into things that matter to him: art, creative projects, investments in his own intellectual ecosystem. The 7-trade strategy suggests he was dollar cost averaging in reverse, selling gradually to avoid flooding the market and depressing HYBE's price, while maximizing his own returns across fluctuating daily prices. That's wealth management at a level most people don't even think about. His military timeline adds another dimension. RM enlisted on December 11, 2023, about 2 years after his stock sales, and served until June 10, 2025. He released Right Place, Wrong Person in May 2024 while still in service, and the album debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, hit number 1 on Billboard's Top Rap Albums chart, making him the first Korean artist ever to top that chart, and was later named Billboard's number 1 K-pop album of 2024. The album went double platinum on Circle charts within 2 months. All of this while wearing a military uniform. So you're looking at a man who sold 10,385 shares of HYBE stock with surgical precision, banked over 3 billion won, served his country, dropped a critically acclaimed album from inside the barracks, and still holds 58,000 shares worth approximately 10.73 billion won at today's market price. That keeps him firmly inside the 10 billion won club, the elite tier of Korean celebrity shareholders whose stakes in a single company exceed 10 billion won in value. RM sits at number 6 on this list not because he miscalculated, but because he redistributed. He took a piece of his HYBE wealth and scattered it into art, into music, into a life philosophy that says owning stock in a company is only one form of investment. The leader of BTS didn't sell out, he diversified. And his remaining 58,000 shares still represent a substantial footprint in the company he helped build from a tiny 2-room studio in Gangnam to a multi-billion-dollar global entertainment empire. But if Jimin sold 16,000 and sits at the bottom, and RM sold 10,385 and lands at number 6, then who's the third and final member who decided to part with some of his shares? The answer is a man known for his generosity, his sunshine energy, and a solo career that broke records long before the military chapter began. Stay right here. Number 5, J-Hope the Sunshine sold the least among the sellers, and that says everything. 3 members of BTS sold shares of HYBE stock in the fall of 2021. You've already met the first 2, Jimin, who dropped 16,000 in a single bold stroke, and RM, who methodically offloaded 10,385 across 7 calculated transactions. Now we arrive at the third and final member who chose to part with a piece of his HYBE ownership, and this one might be the most emotionally layered story of the 3, because young Hoseok sold the smallest amount on a single day, at the highest price per share of any BTS member's transaction. One clean move. Surgical precision. Almost poetic in its restraint. On October 22, 2021, just 3 days after Jin's sale and overlapping with the middle of RM's month-long selling window, J-Hope sold exactly 5,601 shares of HYBE at 332,063 won per share. That is not a rounded number. That is not a rough estimate. That's 332,063 won to the last digit, recorded in South Korea's regulatory filings for the world to see. The total? Approximately 1.85 billion won, around $1.56 million at the time. And with that single transaction, J-Hope went from 68,385 shares down to 62,784. The smallest reduction of any seller. The gentlest touch on the portfolio. If Jimin swung a sledgehammer and RM used a scalpel over 4 weeks, then J-Hope used a needle, one precise poke, barely enough to notice on a balance sheet, but just enough to quietly secure nearly 2 billion won in liquid cash. And here's the detail that financial analysts found remarkable at the time. J-Hope sold at 332,063 won per share, which was the highest unit price achieved by any of the 3 BTS members who sold in 2021. Jimin sold at approximately 302,688 won. RM's transactions averaged around 308,000 won across his 7 trades. But J-Hope? He waited 3 extra days past Jin's sale, picked the exact right moment when the stock was riding its highest wave in that window, and executed. Whether that was luck, advice from a wealth manager, or pure intuition, the result is undeniable. J-Hope got the best price per share out of all 3 sellers. Full stop. But the money is only half the story here, because you cannot separate J-Hope's stock move from J-Hope's character, and his character is built on one of the most unlikely origin stories in all of K-pop. Before he was the main dancer and lead rapper of the biggest boy band in human history, young Hoseok was a kid from Gwangju, not Seoul, not Busan, not any of the major entertainment hubs, Gwangju. A city in the southwestern corner of South Korea known for its democratic uprising, its art culture, and its fierce local pride. He grew up dancing. Not idol choreography, street dance. Popping. Locking. Freestyle. He joined an underground dance crew called Neuron, performed under the stage name Smile Hoya, and won local and national competitions before he was even old enough to drive. He auditioned for JYP Entertainment and didn't make it. Let that sink in. The man who would go on to headline Lollapalooza was once rejected by JYP. Then Big Hit found him. And from the moment he walked into that trainee system, everything changed not just for him, but for the group. Because J-Hope brought something that no amount of vocal training or rap coaching could manufacture: energy. Raw, electric, incandescent energy. The kind of stage presence that makes 80,000 people in a stadium forget they're tired, forget they've been standing for 3 hours, forget everything except the man moving in front of them. That energy became the heartbeat of BTS's live performances. And the same energy defines how J-Hope approached his HYBE shares, with warmth, with generosity, with an understanding that money is a tool, not an identity. Speaking of generosity, this is the man who became a member of the Green Noble Club in 2018 after cumulatively donating over 100 million won to Child Fund Korea. Since then, his charitable contributions have scaled dramatically, donations ranging from 100 million to 350 million won at a time, directed at children's hospitals, scholarship funds for underprivileged students in Gwangju, pediatric medical treatment at Asin Medical Center, and even global projects supporting child survivors of violence in Tanzania. When J-Hope sells 5,601 shares of HYBE stock and pockets 1.85 billion won, the question isn't, why did he sell? The question is, where did that money go? Because if you follow the pattern of his entire adult life, a significant portion likely went right back into the world. Now let's fast forward through the timeline. In July 2022, J-Hope dropped Jack in the Box, his debut studio album, a project that Rolling Stone and NME both named among the best albums of the year, that topped iTunes in 49 countries, and that went platinum in Korea. Then, just days later, he walked onto the main stage at Lollapalooza in Chicago and became the first South Korean artist to ever headline a major American music festival. 70 minutes. 20 songs. A crowd so massive and so loud that fans gave it its own name, HYBEpalooza. Disney Plus turned the experience into a documentary film, J-Hope in the Box. He wasn't just performing, he was rewriting the rules of what a K-pop solo act could achieve on Western soil. On April 18, 2023, J-Hope enlisted in the South Korean military. He served as an assistant training instructor with the 36th Infantry Division and was discharged on October 17, 2024, the second BTS member to complete his service after Jimin. And what did he do after? He didn't rest. In 2024, while transitioning out of the military, he released Hope on the Street Volume 1, an album and docuseries that revisited his roots as a street dancer, featuring collaborations with dancers from Osaka, Paris, New York, and his hometown Gwangju. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, his highest charting solo album, and cracked the top 40 of the UK official albums chart. Then in 2025, he headlined Lollapalooza Berlin in front of 60,000 fans, proving that HYBEpalooza wasn't a one-time event, it was a movement. So where does that leave J-Hope on this list? He holds 62,784 shares of HYBE. At today's price of 185,000 won per share, that's a stake worth approximately 11.61 billion won, comfortably above the 10 billion won threshold, sitting above both Jimin and RM in the ranking. He sold the fewest shares of the three sellers. He sold at the highest price per share. And he retained enough stock to remain a significant shareholder in the company that turned his street dance dreams into a global empire. J-Hope sits at number 5 not because he was careless, but because he was careful. He took just enough off the table to fund his life, his art, and his generosity, while keeping the vast majority of his ownership intact. The sunshine of BTS didn't let go of the company, he just loosened his grip slightly, and even that slight loosening was done with more precision than most hedge fund managers could manage. Now, here's where things get really interesting. From this point forward, every single member on this list never sold a single share. Not one. They held everything Bang Si-hyuk gifted them in 2020, through the highs, through the lows, through the military enlistments, through every market dip and every headline panic. For members, same number of shares. So how do you rank them? That answer is coming up next. Number 4, Jungkook, the golden magnate, never sold a single share, but his empire makes them look like pocket change. And, just like that, we've crossed the line. From this point forward, every member on this list holds the exact same number of shares, 68,385. Not a single share sold. Not one transaction filed. Not a penny taken off the table since August 2020, when Bang Si-hyuk transferred those stocks into their names. For members held firm through every single market swing, through HYBE's dizzying climb past 400,000 won in November 2021, through the gut-wrenching crash below 130,000 won in late 2022, through the military enlistment uncertainty, through the stock's recovery into the 185,000 won range where it sits today. They never flinched. So how do you rank 4 people who all own the same thing? You look at context. You look at what those shares mean within the bigger picture of each member's financial universe. And when you do that, when you zoom out and see the full portrait, number 4 becomes obvious, because this man's empire is so colossal that 68,385 shares of HYBE, worth approximately 12.65 billion won at today's price, represent a smaller slice of his total wealth pie than it does for anyone else on this list. We're talking about Jungkook, the golden magnate, the youngest member of BTS, the boy from Mandeokdong in Busan who grew up watching G-Dragon on TV and decided right then and there, at an age when most kids are worrying about math homework, that he was going to be an idol. He auditioned for Superstar K3 in 2011, didn't make the finals, but caught the attention of not 1, not 2, but 7 different entertainment agencies who all wanted to sign him. 7 companies saw a teenager from Busan and thought, that one. We need that one. And Jungkook, 15 years old, barely tall enough to reach the top shelf, chose the smallest company of them all. Big Hit Entertainment. Why? Because he watched RM rap during a company visit and thought, if this guy is there, that's where I want to be. A 15-year-old chose his entire future based on vibes. Based on the raw charisma of a fellow trainee. And that gut instinct, that irrational, beautiful, adolescent bet on a company that had one semi-successful group and a dream, is the same instinct that now has him sitting on 68,385 shares of a multi-billion-dollar entertainment conglomerate. Jungkook trained for 2 years. He moved to Seoul alone as a teenager, lived in cramped dormitories with 6 other boys, and even spent time in the United States studying dance to sharpen his skills before debuting with BTS on June 13, 2013, at the age of 15. He was called the Golden Magne, a nickname given to him by RM himself before the group even debuted, because the kid could do everything. Sing, dance, rap, draw, edit videos, play sports. Whatever you put in front of Jungkook, he mastered it at a speed that made the other members openly joke that he wasn't entirely human. That golden quality didn't fade with puberty, it metastasized into something the global music industry had never seen before. Fast forward to 2023, the year Jungkook went solo while the group was on hiatus, and the numbers are almost obscene in their scale. 7, featuring Lado, dropped in July 2023 and debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became the first song by an Asian artist to surpass 3 billion streams on Spotify. 3 billion. Not million billion. As of August 2026, it has passed 1.3 billion plays on YouTube Music alone, making it the first debut song by an Asian male artist to reach that mark on the platform. It earned multiple Guinness World Records, including the fastest song to reach 1 billion Spotify streams. Then came Golden, his debut solo album, released November 3, 2023, and the thing detonated on every chart that exists. It set the record for the biggest first day and first week sales by a K-pop soloist in Hanteo chart history. Jungkook became the first solo K-pop artist to sell over 2 million copies in a single day. The album surpassed 5 billion streams on Spotify, making it the fastest studio album by an Asian act to hit that number. It spent 38 consecutive weeks on Spotify's weekly top albums global chart, the longest run for any album by an Asian solo artist. The title track, Standing Next to You, debuted at number 5 on the Hot 100, stayed on the chart for 19 weeks, and by July 2026 surpassed 1.5 billion Spotify streams, making Jungkook the first and only K-pop solo artist with 2 separate songs above 1.5 billion on the platform. At the 2024 Billboard Music Awards, Golden won Top K-pop Album, and Standing Next to You took Top Global K-pop Song. He also swept the 2024 Mama Awards for Best Dance Performance. The man didn't just debut solo, he established a commercial benchmark that may not be matched for a generation. And this is before you even factor in the brand deals. Calvin Klein made him a global ambassador, and the partnership generated millions in earned media value. Industry reports noted that Jungkook's mere association with the brand moved needle harder than traditional advertising campaigns, costing 10 times as much. He performed Dreamers at the 2022 FIFA World Cup opening ceremony in Qatar, the first South Korean artist ever given that stage, in front of an estimated global audience of over 1 billion viewers. Coca-Cola, Samsung, various luxury fashion houses, the commercial gravitational pull of Jungkook is so massive that analysts estimate his net worth in the range of 30 to 50 million USD as of mid-2026, depending on how you count private investments and undisclosed earnings. So here's the thing about Jungkook holding 68,385 shares of HYBE at 185,000 won each, worth approximately 12.65 billion won, or roughly $9.5 million USD. That's a phenomenal sum of money by any normal standard. But when your solo album alone has generated revenue that dwarfs most entertainment companies' entire quarterly earnings, when your brand deals are worth multi-millions annually, when your streaming numbers are literally rewriting the record books every quarter, 12.65 billion won in HYBE stock becomes one piece of a much, much larger mosaic. Jungkook's shares are significant, absolutely. They still make him a stakeholder in the company that raised him. They still tie his financial future to the institution he helped build. But proportionally, those shares represent a smaller fraction of his total estimated wealth than they do for some of the members ranked above him. He enlisted on December 12, 2023, alongside Jimin using the military's buddy system, and both were discharged on June 11, 2025. During those 18 months, the music he had already released continued to break records on autopilot, streams climbing, awards accumulating, brand partnerships holding. Like a financial engine that didn't need its driver behind the wheel to keep accelerating. That's the paradox of Jungkook at number 4. He holds the maximum possible shares, 68,385, untouched, undiminished since the day Bang Si-hyuk gave them. He never sold. He never wavered. But the world he built outside of those shares is so enormous that they sit inside his portfolio like a cherished family heirloom rather than a cornerstone asset. The golden magnate treated his HYBE stock the way he treats everything else in his life. He held it, perfected his relationship with it, and never let go. But is holding the shares everything, or is there something even more powerful about being the person whose creative work actually drives the value of those shares up? The next member on this list held the same 68,385 shares, never sold a single one, and has a story that redefines what ownership really means. Keep watching. Number 3, V, the hidden member who never let go of the company that almost never let him in. There's a kind of loyalty in this world that doesn't show up on balance sheets. It doesn't get filed in regulatory documents. It doesn't generate headlines or push stock tickers. But it's real, and when you understand Kim Taehyung's story, you realize that his 68,385 untouched shares of HYBE aren't just a financial position. They're an emotional contract. A silent handshake between a boy who was almost erased from BTS history before the group even debuted, and the company that kept him hidden from the world for years before finally letting him step into the light. V holds 68,385 shares, the same number as Jungkook at number 4, and the same as the 2 members still above him. He has never sold a single one. But the reason his story lands at number 3 instead of number 4 has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with meaning. Because when you examine what those shares represent within the full scope of who Kim Taehyung is, not just as an artist, but as a human being who was literally a secret for nearly 3 years, the weight of that ownership takes on a dimension that no spreadsheet can capture. Rewind to 2011. A teenage boy from Daegu, not from any entertainment family, not from any prestigious art school, not from Seoul's trainee factory pipeline, walks into a big-hit entertainment open audition. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He came to support a friend. That's it. He was the guy holding the bag, standing in the hallway, waiting for his buddy to finish the audition. But a staff member spotted something. Maybe it was the face, maybe it was the energy, maybe it was the way Taehyung moved when he wasn't trying to impress anyone, and told him to audition too. So he did. He sang. He danced. He beatboxed. He played saxophone. And out of everyone who showed up that day, he was the only person who passed. His friend didn't make it. The boy who came to cheer someone else on walked out with his own trainee contract. That's not a recruitment story, that's a movie scene. But here's where it gets complicated, and where the HYBE shareholding starts to carry emotional weight that you won't find in any other member's narrative. After joining Big Hit as a trainee, V was designated a hidden member. While RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jin, Jimin, and Jungkook were being gradually introduced to the public through social media posts, vlogs, and pre-debut content, Taehyung was kept completely off the radar. No photos. No name drops. No teasers. The company's stated reason was strategic. They wanted to protect him, to prevent rival agencies from poaching a talent they considered exceptionally valuable. But the emotional cost of that decision was real. Taehyung has spoken in interviews about how isolating it was watching the other trainees bond with fans and build their public identities while he sat in the shadows, unsure if the world would ever know his name. He wasn't revealed until June 2nd, 2013, exactly 11 days before BTS officially debuted on June 13th. 11 days. After nearly 2 years of being invisible, he got less than 2 weeks of public introduction before being thrown onto the biggest stage of his life. And he didn't just survive that whiplash, he thrived. He became the visual. The one whose face stopped people mid-scroll. The voice that brought a baritone warmth to a group dominated by tenors and rappers. The actor who landed a role in the 2016 KBS drama Warang, the poet warrior youth, becoming the first BTS member to venture into television acting. Performing under his birth name Kim Taehyung and delivering a portrayal of the character Seokjin that audiences found equal parts heartbreaking and luminous. That drama also gave him the Wooga Squad, a friendship circle with Park Seo-joon, Choi Woo-sik, Park Hyung-sik, and P-Boy that has endured through military service, global tours, and a Hawaiian vacation in late 2025 that had fans and media buzzing for weeks. So when Bang Si-hyuk gifted those 68,385 shares to V in August 2020, there was a poetic justice to the gesture that went beyond financial generosity. The company that once hid him, that once kept his face off the internet and his name out of conversations, was now literally handing him a piece of itself. Ownership. Equity. A seat at the table. And V took those shares and held them. Through every single market fluctuation from 2020 to 2026. Through the stock's euphoric climb past 400,000 won in late 2021, through the devastating drop below 130,000 won in 2022 when BTS announced their group hiatus, through the military uncertainty, through everything he never sold. Not once. Not a fraction. His Layover EP, released September 8, 2023, proved that his artistic instincts were as sharp as his loyalty was deep. The project became the first solo album in Hanteo history to achieve double million seller status. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with 100,000 equivalent album units in its first week. The title track, Slow Dancing, topped iTunes in 75 countries. On Spotify, Layover became the first album by a K-pop soloist to debut, with over 100 million streams in its opening week, and eventually became the first K-pop solo album where every single track surpassed 100 million streams. Time Out magazine named it one of the 30 best albums of 2023, and it was the only K-pop album on the list. The iHeartRadio Music Awards honored it as Favorite Debut Album. And here's the remarkable part. V accomplished all of this largely without traditional US promotional activities. No massive American talk show circuits. No month-long press tours. He let the music speak, released it into the world, and watched the world come to him. Even during military service, which began on December 11, 2023, with V serving in the 2-Corps Special Duty Team until his discharge on June 10, 2025, his artistic output continued. He released FRIEND-S in March 2024, a pop soul R&B single that explored the tension between friendship and romance. Then, in November 2024, he dropped Winter Ahead, a jazz-pop collaboration with the legendary Park Hyo-shin, featuring lyrics penned by Jesse Harris, the songwriter behind Norah Jones' iconic Don't Know Why. The song was designed to bring warmth during winter, and it did exactly that, charting across Asia and generating critical acclaim for its sophisticated, genre-defiant approach to pop music. Post-discharge, the brand deals confirmed what the music already suggested. V operates in a commercial stratosphere reserved for a handful of global icons. His ongoing partnership with Celine as their global brand ambassador has driven measurable profit surges in the Asian luxury market. In early 2026, he swept Global Icon of the Year, Global Face of the Year, and Global King of Fashion at the Global Choice 100 Global Fashion Icons. He holds a decade-long presence on TC Candler's 100 Most Handsome Faces list, ranking 7th in 2025, his 10th consecutive year. His brand portfolio reads like a luxury department store directory: Cartier, Coca-Cola, Compose Coffee, Turner, Yunth, Snow Peak Apparel, Paradise City, each partnership structured as an ongoing, long-term campaign rather than a one-time endorsement. At 185,001 per share, these 68,385 shares of HYBE are worth approximately 12.65 billion won, identical to Jungkook's valuation. But what separates V at number 3 is the narrative gravity of those shares. This is a man whose relationship with the company that owns those stocks began in secrecy, in silence, in the loneliness of being hidden. For him to hold every single share, to never take a one off the table, isn't just financial discipline. It's an act of reconciliation. It's V saying, with his portfolio, what he's said with his music and his career for over a decade: I belong here. I always belonged here. And I'm not letting go. But if V's story is about emotional ownership, the next member's story is about something even more powerful. About what happens when you become so commercially dominant as a solo artist that your personal brand single-handedly moves the stock price of the company you hold shares in. That story is next. Number 2, Jimin, the only Korean soloist to ever hit one on the Hot 100, and he never sold a single share. Here's something that will bend your mind if you think about it long enough. In the entire history of the Billboard Hot 100, a chart that has been running since 1958, tracking every single song consumed in the United States across radio, streaming, and sales for over 6 decades, only one South Korean solo artist has ever reached the number 1 position. Not 2. Not a handful. 1. And that person holds 68,385 shares of HYBE stock, has never sold a single one of them, and is sitting right here at number 2 on this list. His name is Park Jimin. Born October 13, 1995, in Busan, South Korea. The last member to join the BTS lineup. The one who trained for barely 6 months before being thrown onto a debut stage that would eventually lead to stadiums holding 100,000 people. And the man whose solo music has done something that arguably no other individual in K-pop has achieved. He didn't just chart globally. He moved markets. When Jimin does something, stock prices react. When Jimin releases music, entire corporate strategies shift. His 68,385 shares of HYBE aren't just shares he passively holds, they're shares whose value he actively, directly, measurably influences with every song he drops, every chart he tops, and every brand he touches. That's not just ownership. That's authorship of value itself. Let's go back to where it started, because Jimin's path to becoming a shareholder in one of Asia's most powerful entertainment companies began in a dance studio in Busan, not a boardroom in Seoul. Before he was Park Jimin of BTS, he was a top student in the modern dance department at Busan High School of Arts, one of the most competitive performing arts institutions in South Korea. Contemporary dance. Ballet. Technique so refined that his instructors told him he had the potential for a career in professional dance performance, the kind that fills opera houses, not concert arenas. But Jimin also trained at Just Dance Academy in Busan, learning popping, locking, and street dance styles that gave him a raw, kinetic edge completely different from his classical foundation. That duality, the elegance of a trained contemporary dancer fused with the grit of a street performer, became the signature that made him one of the most captivating stage performers alive. A teacher encouraged him to audition for big hit entertainment. He did. He got in. And then came the pressure, because Jimin was the final member added to the BTS roster, joining the trainee system in 2012 with less than a year before the group's debut date. While other members had been training for 2, 3, even 4 years, Jimin had months. He compensated the only way he knew how, by outworking everyone in the building. Stories from the pre-debut era consistently describe Jimin as the member who stayed latest in the practice room, the one whose lights were still on when everyone else had gone to sleep, the perfectionist who refused to let his late arrival define his contribution. He debuted as the main dancer and a lead vocalist on June 13, 2013, and within a year, fans and critics alike recognized that something extraordinary was happening every time Park Jimin touched a stage. Fast forward to March 2023. Jimin releases Face, his debut solo album, and the title track, Like Crazy, doesn't just chart. It debuts at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Number 1. The highest position any song can achieve on the most important music chart in the Western world. Jimin became the first South Korean solo artist in history to accomplish this. Like Crazy was only the 66th song ever to debut at the top spot in the chart's entire 6-decade existence. The album Face simultaneously reached number 2 on the Billboard 200, setting the record at the time for the highest charting album by a Korean solo artist. And here's what made that moment seismic for HYBE as a company. Jimin's Hot 100 number 1 wasn't just a personal milestone. It was proof of concept. It demonstrated to investors, to analysts, to the global entertainment industry that BTS members could individually carry the commercial weight of the group's brand. During a period when all 7 members were either heading into military service or already enlisted, Jimin's solo success sent a signal to the Korean stock market that HYBE's artist roster could sustain revenue generation at the highest level even during the group hiatus. Financial analysts covering HYBE specifically cited BTS solo releases, with Jimin's Like Crazy leading the charge as key factors in maintaining investor confidence during 2023 and 2024. When your music directly affects the stock price of the company you hold shares in, the concept of ownership takes on a recursive, almost philosophical quality. Jimin isn't just a shareholder. He's a value creator holding shares in his own value creation. Then came Muse in 2024, and the numbers got even more absurd. The lead single, Who, became a streaming leviathan, surpassing 2.5 billion streams on Spotify by July 2026, becoming the fastest song by a K-pop soloist to hit 1 billion streams, achieving the feat in fewer than 118 days. Spotify's own 2024 Wrapped campaign named Who the most streamed K-pop track worldwide for the year. On the Billboard Hot 100, it debuted at number 14, climbed to a peak of number 12, and stayed on the chart for an astonishing 33 weeks, one of the longest chart runs by any K-pop soloist in history. On the Billboard Global 200 and Global excluding US charts, Who topped both and remained present for over 70 and 80 weeks, respectively. The album Muse itself debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, making Jimin the first Korean solo artist to place more than one album in the chart's top 3. It spent over 26 consecutive weeks on the Billboard 200 and was voted favorite K-pop album of 2024 in a Billboard fan poll with 41% of total votes. At the 2025 iHeartRadio Music Awards, WHO won K-pop Song of the Year. The financial ripple effect of these achievements on HYBE's market perception cannot be overstated. Every stream, every chart entry, every award translates into data points that analysts feed into their models when evaluating HYBE's revenue projections. And Jimin, holding his 68,385 shares at 185,000 won each, worth approximately 12.65 billion won, is simultaneously the producer of that value and the beneficiary of it. He's both the engine and the passenger. The brand portfolio amplifies this even further. Jimin was appointed as Dior's global brand ambassador in January 2023, and the impact was immediate. Reports noted that Dior's stock price surged to an all-time high following the announcement. His appearances at Paris Fashion Week consistently dominated digital discourse, generating earned media value that analysts described as a multiplier effect. Items he wore sold out within hours. Campaigns he fronted outperformed traditional advertising by margins that made luxury industry veterans reassess their entire celebrity endorsement strategies. He enlisted alongside Jungkook on December 12, 2023, under the military's buddy system, companion soldiers assigned to the same unit, the 5th Infantry Division Artillery Brigade, and was discharged on June 11, 2025. 18 months in uniform, and during that time, the music he had already released continued its autonomous conquest of global streaming charts. WHO kept climbing. Muse kept selling. The Dior partnership kept generating value. Jimin's commercial machinery didn't need him to be present to keep running. It had achieved escape velocity, orbiting the global entertainment market on its own momentum. So here sits Park Jimin at number 2, holding the full, undiminished 68,385 shares gifted to him by Bang Si-hyuk in August 2020. Worth 12.65 billion won today. Never sold. Never reduced. Never touched. But unlike any other member on this list, Jimin's relationship to those shares is uniquely symbiotic. He doesn't just own a piece of HYBE, his creative output literally shapes what that piece is worth on any given trading day. He is the rare kind of shareholder who can increase the value of his own holdings by walking into a recording studio, pressing record, and letting the world do the rest. But if Jimin's connection to his shares is symbiotic, then the member at number 1 has a connection that goes even deeper, someone whose fingerprints are embedded in the very DNA of HYBE's most valuable asset, its music catalog. This is the member who doesn't just influence the stock price with releases, he built the architecture of sound that made the company worth investing in at all. Number 1 is next. Number 1, Suga, the producer who doesn't just own the stock, he built what makes it valuable. Every company has shareholders. Every company has artists on its roster. Every company has executives who make decisions, marketers who push campaigns, and accountants who track the bottom line. But there is only one person in the entire HYBE ecosystem who occupies a position so unique, so structurally foundational, that removing his contributions from the company's catalog would be like pulling the foundation stones out from under a skyscraper and asking it to keep standing. Yoongi. Suga. Augusti. The underground rapper from Daegu who used to choose between eating 1,001 bowl of noodles or paying bus fare to get home because he couldn't afford both. The kid whose parents threw away his lyrics and music notes, trying to force him to become a government worker instead of chasing the ridiculous, impossible, statistically suicidal dream of making it in music. The teenager who got into a motorcycle accident while delivering food during a part-time job he needed to survive as a trainee, dislocating his shoulder so badly that the injury would haunt him for over a decade. That person, that kid who couldn't even afford to eat and ride the bus on the same day, now sits at the number 1 position on this list, holding 68,385 shares of HYBE stock worth approximately 12.65 billion won. And he has never sold a single one. But here's the thing that makes Suga's number 1 ranking not just justified, but inevitable. While every other member on this list holds shares in a company they helped make famous through performance, through visuals, through brand deals, through streaming numbers, Suga holds shares in a company whose most valuable underlying asset, its music catalog, was substantially built by his own hands. He didn't just perform HYBE's product. He manufactured it. Over 170 registered credits at Konka. Songs written, produced, arranged, and composed not just for BTS, but for artists across the entire Korean music landscape. He produced 8 for IU, a song that achieved a certified all-kill in South Korea, topping every single real-time and daily chart simultaneously, debuting at #1 on Billboard's World Digital Song Sales, and setting records for Korean female soloists on iTunes across 59 countries. He produced That for Peace Why, a Latin-infused dance track that hit number 80 on the Billboard Hot 100, crossed 100 million YouTube views in its first week, and dominated global iTunes charts in dozens of countries. He produced Wine for Saran, which won the Hot Trend Award at the 2017 Melon Music Awards. He created Suga's interlude for Halsey. He wrote and produced for HYBE, for Epic High, for Lee So-ra. And within BTS's own discography, his fingerprints are on tracks that defined entire eras: Tomorrow, Jump, Boys with Fun, Autumn Leaves, First Love, Trivia, Sisa, Interlude, Shadow, songs that aren't just hits, but architectural load-bearing walls in the structure of BTS's artistic identity. When you buy a share of HYBE stock, what exactly are you buying? You're buying a piece of a company whose value is derived primarily from its intellectual property, its music catalog, its artist relationships, its content pipeline. And a disproportionately significant percentage of that catalog was created, co-created, or shaped by Min Yoongi. That means when Suga holds 68,385 shares of HYBE, he isn't just holding shares in a company he works for. He's holding shares in a company whose product he literally engineered. It's as if a master architect who designed the building also owned equity in the construction company. The value of the stock is inseparable from the value of his work. That's not just stock ownership, that's intellectual equity compounded on financial equity. And no other BTS member occupies that particular intersection of creator and shareholder with the same structural depth. In 2018, Suga became the first BTS member to be promoted to full membership at KOMCA, the Korea Music Copyright Association, a status reserved for individuals who have made substantial musical contributions and met strict royalty thresholds of earning over 30 million won annually for 3 consecutive years. That was 2018. Before Map of the Soul. Before B. Before Dynamite and Butter and Permission to Dance. Before the stock was even publicly traded. Suga had already crossed the royalty threshold that most Korean songwriters never reach in their entire careers, and he did it years before the world fully understood what BTS was about to become. The origin story only amplifies the magnitude of where he stands now. Min Yoongi grew up in Daegu in conditions he has described as financially dire. He started writing lyrics at 13 years old after being inspired by Epic High and Stony Skunk. He taught himself MIDI production. He joined an underground hip-hop crew called D-Town and performed under the stage name Gloss, the English translation of Yoongi, meaning shine. He rapped about real things: poverty, systemic frustration, the Gwangju uprising. He placed second in a big hit rap competition and was signed, but not as an idol. As a producer. Big Hit originally brought Min Yoongi in to make music behind the scenes. The plan was never for him to stand in front of a camera. But over time, the company realized that his raw, unfiltered honesty, the same quality that made his underground rap cuts so deep, would be even more powerful delivered from a stage. So he became Suga. He became a performer. But he never stopped being a producer. And that dual identity, the man behind the mixing board who also stands under the spotlight, is what makes his shareholding fundamentally different from every other member's. His solo career as August D proved that the duality was not a compromise, but a superpower. D-Day, released in 2023, debuted at #2 on the Billboard 200. He became the first Asian act to top Billboard's Top Rap Albums chart, a chart that had previously been the exclusive domain of American hip-hop royalty. The lead single Hegium debuted at number 58 on the Hot 100. The album sold over 1 million copies on Hanteo in its first day and reached number 1 on the French albums chart, making him the first K-pop soloist to top the chart in France. He surpassed 1 billion Spotify streams across all his credits. And then he took it on the road. The Suga August D Tour D-Day became the highest-grossing concert tour by a K-pop soloist and Asian rapper in history. 28 shows. Sold out. What this ranking reveals isn't just who has the most shares. It's that each member's relationship with their HYBE equity tells a completely different story. Jin's strategic liquidation before military service, RM's calculated 7 trade diversification, J-Hope's surgical single-day precision, Jungkook's diamond hand grip alongside an empire that dwarfs his stock value, V's emotional reconciliation with the company that once hit him, Jimin's recursive loop of creating the very value his shares represent, and Suga's foundational claim as the architect, whose music literally built what the stock is worth. 7 members. 1 company. 7 completely different philosophies of ownership. And every single one of them, from number 7 to number 1, walked into that HYBE boardroom as an idol and walked out as a stakeholder in their own legacy. That's the list. That's the breakdown. And that is how much HYBE stock each BTS member owns in 2026. See you next time, Army.